How's it going, guys? It's your boy Kanji FPL and welcome back to the channel. On today's video, we're going to be breaking down my FPL transfer plans. Now, I'm in a very intriguing position because when I compare myself to other FPL content creators, most of them have Haaland within their structures, and I don't. I haven't owned him for his 7 goals in 3 weeks, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to maybe own him from game week 7 to 10 when he has Fulham, Southampton, Wolves, and Bournemouth. Or maybe my best route will actually be to avoid him. I'm not even sure, so why don't we just break down my transfer plans and we can decide together. This is the way that my team looks going into game week 4. I just need to make a quick switch back from Bukayo Saka to Mo Salah for captaincy. Unfortunately, I made my first 50-50 decision and I got it wrong, where I went for Saka cap at home to Brighton, and I thought it was the right captaincy on paper, and I still stand by that. But unfortunately, Chris Kavanagh, the referee of the Arsenal and Brighton game, just took the matter into his own hands, gave Rice a very harsh red card, and that kind of ruined me because Saka had a double-digit score on the cards. It was definitely coming if you watched the game, but then he only picked up 1 return, and I lost both of my differential clean sheet points from our Arsenal defenders, so it's a very tough week. But fortunately, I still got a green arrow somehow to 3.3 million, but it's been a very underwhelming start to the season. However, when I think about Salah as the main captaincy option over the next couple of weeks, I'm very happy, especially in game week 4 and game week 5 where he's at home to Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth. It feels very obvious and I feel very safe, happy, and comfortable. One of the main reasons that I feel this way is because Liverpool don't have a striker in FPL that's taking the bonus points away from Salah. Unlike a team like Arsenal, whenever Havertz scores, he's going to be taking up a lot of the bonus points. But Liverpool don't have a Darwin that's consistently starting, or a Gakpo. And they just have Jota who's starting and getting 60 minutes and then he gets subbed off. So even if he gets a return, Salah will likely just pick up more BPS because he'll get more shots on target. So it just means that Salah will be more creative over the 90 minutes when he's playing, and that means that Salah will be the main contender for the bonus points unless somebody like Van Dijk or Trent gets an attacking return. I think Salah is just a lock for at least 2 bonus points every single week, just like Haaland is whenever he's scoring as well. And that's why I think it just makes Salah such an elite FPL pick. He's a bonus points hogger. He gets the extra point for the goal. He gets the extra point for the clean sheet. Like Salah is just a lock. The BPS changes have really benefited somebody like him, and I'm very tempted to hold him over the course of the season and make him my hero, but he's older. And the thing is with Mo is that he's kind of aging like fine wine. He really reminds me of like LeBron James. And when we look at LeBron and we look at all of the NBA players within his draft class, they've all retired. It's literally like just LeBron in the league, and he's still like a top 10 player. And I look at Salah, who's past 30, and he's still at the peak of his powers. He's really taking care of his body, and that's extended his prime. And he's still one of the best players in the league, and it's unbelievable. I really expected a drop-off, given how the end of last season went with the falling out with Klopp and Salah just underperforming expectations, but he's really started the season like a house on fire, and I'm really happy that I have him in my team. Just so you know, I'm going to be happy captaining Salah in game weeks 4 and 5, where he plays against Forest and Bournemouth, and then Saka, where he plays against Leicester and Southampton in game weeks 6 and 7, both at home. So it just has to come down to what I'm going to do for captaincy in game weeks 8, 9, and 10. Because when I get to game week 11, I think I have that earmarked for Son, who plays against Ipswich at home, or against Bruno, who plays against Leicester at home. So it's just about 8, 9, and 10. Now, in these weeks, it's very difficult because Man City have very interesting fixtures. In these weeks, Man City play against Wolves, Southampton, and Bournemouth. And it feels very obvious to just be bringing Haaland in so he can cover the captaincy in these weeks. But I feel like that's very short term, because when you look at the fixtures after that, they play against Spurs, where you'd expect them to destroy them, as well as Man United. However, they play away at Anfield and away at Villa Park in this run, and they played against Nottingham Forest, where Haaland's only scored maximum 1 return against Forest at home or away, and Man City always drop points to Crystal Palace. So there's a fixture run from 12 to 17 where I'm very comfortable going against Haaland, and so it would be a very short-sighted move to bring Haaland into my team just for 4 weeks. And I'm not sure I want to do that. And I wonder if I might be better off just being suboptimal with my captaincy and keeping my structure the same. And that's actually the way that I'm leaning. And I know that sounds a little bit weird because Haaland's picked up 7 goals in 3 games, and he'll probably pick up at least 1 more hat-trick, given that he scored a hat-trick against Fulham and against Wolves last year. And he's the main captaincy option in game week 9 as well, but I'm just not sure that captaining Haaland every single week is the right way to be playing FPL this year. And there are 3 reasons why I think I will likely avoid Haaland for the whole season. The first is going to be that I'm not sure that the combination of Haaland, Semenyo / Smith Rowe, and Morgan Rogers will outscore a combination of Isak, Eze, and Son over the course of 38 weeks. I have a feeling that yes, over certain weeks where Haaland is going to be the best captaincy option, you're likely going to destroy those weeks. But I think over the other weeks, I think you'll just bleed expected value and expected points to the combinations that have 3 penalty takers that are talismans for their club. Yes, of course, Haaland feels like the best captaincy options from game week 7 to 10, but over the course of 38 weeks, there are going to be fixture patches where I think somebody like a Bukayo Saka, for example, from 12 to 17, where you could captain him pretty much every single week and he'd get at least 1 return. Similar for like Palmer from game weeks 12 to 17, where you could say the same thing. And I'm sure if you just looked at Messi's fixtures from game week 7 to 10, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say, hey, if KDB or Foden are starting, they're likely going to be good FPL picks. And I think there are so many good FPL picks and the pricing is so great that I think that the players that go for an only Haaland style draft will only thrive if players like Semenyo and Smith Rowe consistently pick up at least 4 or 5 FPL points per start, and I'm not sure they have the quality to do that on a consistent basis. The second reason that I'm willing to bet against Erling Haaland is his injury record. Now, if we look at him over the last 6 seasons, 3 seasons with Manchester City and 3 seasons with Borussia Dortmund, he's only started 30 games twice in the last 6 years. So he's not as durable as like a Mo Salah and a Bukayo Saka, or even a Harry Kane for that matter. And that's why I feel like we're sort of taking him for granted and we're just expecting him to be at the same levels of the players that we know and the premiums that we're used to in FPL, but he hasn't shown that in the past. He's very fragile. We saw what happened to him last year where he missed a chunk of the season just for a foot injury. I mean, think about the physical specimen that Haaland is. He's super tall, super fit, super strong. And so if he ever picks up injuries, there's going to be a lot of weight on the joints that he has in his body. And that's why it's going to be hard for him to sustain playing in the midweek and the weekend on a consistent basis for months on end. And that's why I think with him having the summer off, it put him in a very good position to start the season. And I gravely undervalued that. I should have taken that into account. And given the fact that Man City have lost Alvarez, I think Haaland is in line to just get maybe more minutes, right? Well, no, I think that's wrong. That's my third reason to be going against Haaland, because I think Pep really has to protect him. Because when we look at last season, he only had appearances in 31 games. The season before that, he only had appearances in 35 matches. And I think this is going to be more in line with what I'm expecting. He's going to start 35 games, maybe even 32 or 33 if he picks up some nagging injuries along the way. But I'm expecting him to get 70th minute subs from now until the end of the season, because I don't think he'll be likely to be staying on the pitch. Of course, in bigger matches, if he needs to stay on against Liverpools or the Arsenals of this world, then yeah, he'll play 90s. But if we look at what happened against Ipswich in particular, he scored 2 goals very quickly in the first half. And then in the second half, he was invisible for like 30 minutes. And then he scored that last goal at the 80th minute mark. But I'm not sure if Haaland will be on the pitch in the 80th minute mark when Man City are up 3-0 against a mid-table or bottom half team in the midway point of the season, because they need to look to protect him. They don't have a striker. They don't have an alternative to Haaland. So Pep would be ridiculous to be playing him for 75 plus minutes in games that he doesn't need to, where they've already won the game and killed the game. Yes, I expect Haaland to continue to return, but I don't think he'll be returning 2 or 3 goals consistently over the course of the season, because I just don't think Pep has the ability and the luxury of playing Haaland that many minutes. I just want to say that I reserve the right to change my mind. Just like you, I'm a regular FPL manager. On a week-by-week basis, we get more information and I may change my thought process. But currently, I'm leaning towards going against Haaland. However, if he goes out there against Brentford, picks up a brace, against Arsenal, picks up a brace, then yeah, I'll be bringing Haaland in for Salah in game week 7 without a shadow of a doubt. But if things go according to the way that I'm currently thinking, which is that he gets 1 return in the next 2 weeks, maybe even blanks in both of them, then yeah, I think I'll be looking to avoid him over the course of the season. But let's see how things play out. Just a reminder that if you go against Haaland, it's very important to nail your captaincy route. The colors that are in green are going to be the non-negotiable captaincy options. Interestingly, I'll probably avoid the game week 9 one if I go without Haaland. But the Saka against Leicester in game week 6 and Isak against Leicester in game week 16 are the 100% nailed captaincy options, and Haaland in game week 9 are probably just the best ones to be targeting. And in every other week, I think it's very open from captaincy. Now, I think I'm going to be relying on Saka specifically because he has Leicester and then he has Southampton and Bournemouth. Now, I know it's not going to be as explosive as Haaland, but I think this could be a really interesting debate. If Arsenal go out there and pick up 3 clean sheets, Saka picks up a double-digit haul twice in the next 3 weeks, then I think this would be a really interesting conversation, because I'm sure Haaland went out there and picked up a hat-trick in one of these games, but I think my team still would have kept up the pace because I would have a more well-rounded squad than the Haaland teams. It's just when we get to game week 9 where I need to think about who I'd like to captain. Maybe I could consider even selling Saka to a Manchester City differential like a Phil Foden or a Kevin De Bruyne, or I could even just consider captaining Brian Mbeumo against Ipswich at home, because I noticed that Leif Davis is very similar to Alfie Doughty, where he likes to push forward, and that leaves massive gaps behind right into the space that the talisman for Brentford, Brian Mbeumo, could go into, a 90-minute man on the penalties for Brentford. So he's definitely somebody I would consider captaining in this fixture. We've seen a zonal weakness for Ipswich in the first couple of weeks where we saw Salah destroy them in that sense. And I think that Savinho guy from Man City also did the same thing in game week 1. So just going to be keeping my eye on that one thing specifically to maybe even consider Mbeumo a capsule option in game week 9. But other than that, I think I would likely just captain a Man City differential like a Foden or KDB, maybe even a Rico Lewis if I'm crazy enough. Then I would get to game week 10, where I think Salah is going to be the best capsule option, but I could even consider the Foden or KDB person that I bring in, and I could even consider a Heung-min Son, who got a hat-trick of offside goals against Aston Villa at home. Just a reminder that whenever you go for the Man City midfielders, it's kind of like a one-night stand. You don't want to be there long-term. You kind of just want to be in there. You want to be in there quick, and you want to get out quick as well. And that's why I think when we're looking at the options like Foden and KDB, it's important that you're able to just nail their minutes, because minutes are not nailed. They're not on penalties. They're not good long-term picks you want to be married to, but they're just short-term options that are really great. And I was looking at the Man City fixtures where in game week 8, there's a 2-week gap until they play in the Champions League against Sparta Prague, and then another 2-week gap until they play against Southampton in game week 9. And so I found that it would be very easy to predict who the lineup is going to be for Southampton, like understanding if it's going to be Rico Lewis or Walker starting at right back, or maybe even a Foden or KDB playing in the center attacking mid positions, or even just trying to understand the system that Pep wants to use once Foden is back up to speed. So I got my eyes on Manchester City and trying to figure out who is the best differential to bring in. Currently, my mindset would be on Phil Foden, but if it's KDB, then so be it. I don't know who it's going to be. I just trust Foden because he's younger and he played more minutes last year than KDB did. So that's what my current thought process is. I think I would likely be on Salah or Son cap in game week 10. And game week 11, this is where I think I can start to have some fun, because I would likely want to own both of these guys, Son versus Ipswich and Bruno versus Leicester. And then in game week 12, I think there's so many different capsule options. I will likely go with Palmer versus Leicester because I think he's the most explosive. If I own Salah, I'd obviously be on Salah. That's a no-brainer. And game week 13, I'll likely be on Mbeumo against Leicester at home. In game week 14, I'd be on Palmer versus Southampton away. And then I think in 16 and 17, I'll probably just be on Isak both weeks. There are so many different capsule options to consider in game week 15. We'll figure it out when we get there. But it just goes to show you that if you look ahead at the fixtures over the next 10 to 15 weeks, you'll be able to figure out who are the 2 or 3 main capsule options that you want within your team. So that way you're able to captain the options that you think has the most upside in that week, given the fixtures and the form and just the eye test that you've been watching and seeing who has the most upside. So I think I'm likely going to be going against Haaland. I really like the captaincy route. I'm only really nervous about maybe game week 9 and 10. But apart from that, I just need to focus on game week 15. I'm pretty content with all of the captains that I've selected. Let's just have a discussion about the premiums, apart from Haaland and Salah, because they're obviously the best ones and they're the most expensive. But apart from that, how would you rank the others? I feel like I would want to start with Bukayo Saka because he has 3 years of being a 200-point player. And I just have the trust in Arsenal. Even if there are injuries to Odegaard or Havertz or Saliba or Gabriel, over the course of the season, there's still going to be really good picks. And I just trust Saka. And because the player that they brought in is Sterling, I don't really think he's enough competition to take very many minutes away from Bukayo. And I think Sterling is the type of player that will likely just get starts in the cup matches. Other than that, I don't really see a reason to be worried about Saka and his minutes long term. And he has stronger underlying XGI per 90 than a Heung-min Son. I think Palmer had higher XG per 90 than Saka last year, but Palmer had a ridiculous amount of pens. Like a ridiculous amount of pens. And if you normalize for that, I think Saka is going to be on a higher level, given that Saka has better underlyings than Son, and he has more nailed minutes than Foden or KDB. I think Saka is at 10.0 the best premium. Then I think it's just a discussion between the rest of who is the second best one. Because I look at Son and I look at Palmer and I see 2 of the best players in the league, both 90-minute men on the penalties for their clubs, talismanic options. With Son, he's the type of player that picks up, 18 XG last year and scored 25 goals. Like, that's what he does. He's like invisible. At times it's like you don't even see him, and then he just goes out there and picks up a hat-trick in the most random game against like a Burnley or against like an Arsenal on the counter. He picks up 2 goals. You're like, what the heck? Classic Son. Like, he's so fixture-proof, right? That's why we love him. And he's 10.0. But he just doesn't get the very good underlyings. And it reminds me of a situation like Carmelo Anthony in basketball, where it's like there are players that are elites. For example, Carmelo was so good at mid-range jump shots. And as they get older, if they lose that one skill, it makes them a very bad option because they're likely going to be overvalued and overpriced in betting markets. They're going to be overpriced in FPL in this game. And I just kind of think about, like, if Son loses that edge in his finishing, bro, he is not worth 10.0. And that's why I'd rather be relying on somebody like a Palmer at 10.5, specifically because the X minutes are there. And I favor Palmer. I know he's 0.5 more, but it's just the X minutes. Like, given the fact that they're in Conference League and they haven't even included Palmer in the squad, I feel like Palmer is just going to be more reliable than Son. And if we're looking to captain someone between Son and Palmer, I think Son is the one that could be more explosive, give you like a 17-pointer from a hat-trick. But I think if you wanted to captain this player 3 or 4 times, I think Palmer would be the one that you would want to captain because you'd probably get 3 returns from 4. Whereas with Son, you'd probably get 2 returns from 4, but maybe it would be more explosive. So maybe even I'm a little bit biased there, where over the course of 4 captaincy weeks, you might be better off with a more explosive option, but I think Palmer has the explosivity and a higher floor. So I think I just trust Palmer a little bit more than Son, but he's 0.5 more expensive, and so that is factored into the price, and that's why it's really hard for me to decide between those two, but I'm just currently leaning more so towards Palmer if I had to pick one. And then there's Foden and KDB. These guys are like the ugly ducklings, bro. It's like they're like the one-night stands. You want to hit it and quit it. You don't want to be there long term. They don't have nailed minutes. They don't have the penalties, but they are very good. Whenever things are good for their fixtures, you want to be there, but you just can't trust Pep. And who knows, he might like manipulate his system where he only needs to be playing one of these guys. But with Alvarez gone, I'm assuming Foden and KDB will be the main players, but maybe even a Gundogan will take minutes away from somebody like KDB over the course of the season. And maybe even Gundogan will take some minutes away from Haaland over the course of the season. So I don't know, bro. Like, it's a weird dynamic. I have to really analyze and wait to see how Pep sort of utilizes his new squad and the new tactics that he wants to set up, how he integrates Foden back into the team. So I'm all eyes to see what the tactical setup is for Man City. But currently, the way that I would structure it is that Saka is the best of these sub-premiums, and then I think Palmer will score the most points. But I think you'd have to put him instead on the same level because Son is at the same price point. But if I had to risk it as my differential, I'd want Palmer because I think he's going to be more reliable, because I think he just won't go invisible in games like Sonny can because he just doesn't get enough service at Tottenham Hotspur. And then I think Foden and KDB would be a tier below those two. That's how I would structure it. How would you structure it? Let me know in the comment section down below. Coming back to my team selection going into Game Week 4, I looked at my team and I was very content with it. I'd already used one of my transfers, switching out Dwight McNeil to Antoine Semenyo. Very happy with that move, but a lot of my core is very strong. Like my Arsenal players, my Liverpool players, Bruno, Eze, Isak, I'm happy to hold them. It's just about the Muniz and Armstrong position where I'm very unhappy. So that's where I had to spend my transfers, and I have gone ahead and made 2 transfers already. I've done Muniz to Joao Pedro. It feels like an absolute no-brainer. I know Joao Pedro was called up to the Brazil squad. I'm not expecting him to start that game for Brazil, but I think he'll be back in time around Wednesday or Thursday. That would give him more than 24 to 48 hours to prep with the team and be ready. I think people usually just overreact to the international breaks and expect Joao Pedro to be benched, but I mean, think about it. He just scored in back-to-back games against Arsenal and Man United. I'd be surprised if the coach went out there and benched him, especially given the fact that he's on the penalties and probably one of their most important players. So Pedro coming in feels like a good transfer for the long term. He's actually been priced at 5.7. I bought him in at 5.6. So I have 0.4 in the bank, and that's where I did Adam Armstrong to the one and the only Calvert-Lewin. Now, I know this is not going to be a popular transfer. Most people, when they're watching this, are going to be like, ew, an Everton player. But if you didn't watch the Bournemouth and Everton game, you genuinely cannot understand why this is going to be a good pick. Everton absolutely dominated Bournemouth in the first 80 minutes. They created all of the XG. They had all the chances. And then after the 80th minute mark, it flipped. And then Bournemouth just scored 3 goals in 10 minutes, which was absurd. I've genuinely not seen that in the Premier League over the last 3 or 4 years of watching. But that's what Everton have been doing. They've been very poor recently. I expect that to change once Brandthwaite is back in the 11. Calvert-Lewin has really good fixtures over the next couple of weeks. In fact, he rotates very well with Antoine Semenyo, where Semenyo plays against Liverpool in 5, Arsenal in 8, Villa in 9, and Man City in 10. And that's when I could just play Calvert-Lewin for Leicester in 5, Ipswich in 8, Fulham in 9, and Southampton in 10. So he rotates very well with Antoine Semenyo. And if I decide to sell Salah and Semenyo and bring in a Palmer or Son, and then bring in Mbeumo in the spot, then I could rotate Calvert-Lewin with Joao Pedro, because Joao Pedro has difficult fixtures in game week 8, 10, and 11, and that's when I would just play Calvert-Lewin for his Ipswich away, Southampton away, and I would probably look to sell him on to Acuna or a Larson from Wolves, who play against Southampton in game week 11. So that's the way that I'd be looking to set up my team. So that way the teams that have Haaland and Joao Pedro and don't have any 8th attacker would have to play their Joao Pedro in game weeks 10 and 11, and I'd be hoping to gain ground against teams that do that. So that's the way that my team is currently lined up. It puts me in a position to still bring Haaland in if I want to. Once we get to game week 7, I'd be able to do a triple move of Isak out for Haaland, Salah out for Mbeumo, and then I'd be able to just do Trent out to the defender that I currently have my eyes on, which is going to be Rico Lewis. So this is going to be my likely move if I bring Haaland back in. But if I decide to just avoid Haaland, my move would likely just be Salah to Son or Palmer. I'm currently leaning towards Son, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm very open. I could easily be on Palmer, to be honest with you. And then I'd look to be bringing Brian Mbeumo into my team, and I would do Leif Davis to Lewis. So this is the way that my team looks like, and I can tell you that this structure is unbelievable. Like, I look at this squad, like, it's stacked all over the pitch. Like, I've got 8 penalty takers in the Prem. Then I've got the 2 best defenders in the game, where I think I have Gabriel and Trent, and then I have Saliba, who is just covering the Arsenal defense, like he's my differential, and then I have Rico Lewis, who could be the best differential defender in the game, and if I feel like Rico Lewis is going to be benched, I can always make the move from Trent or Gabriel to a Vardiol, and then I've got double Man City defense, but I don't want to be doing double Man City defense, bro, especially not for a larger period of time. I'm not a fan of Ederson, but it's just there because once we get to like the Wolves and Southampton, maybe the Bournemouth fixture, I could consider double defense. But once we get there, I could even consider maybe selling somebody like a Saka to a Phil Foden, right? Bring him into this position. And then my team would look something like this, where we'd get there and we would look something like that. And I would probably just captain Foden here. And it puts me in a good position where I have my Saka captain for 6, 7, 8. Game week 9, I'd get my differential. In game week 10, I'd captain, I think, one of my differential options, which would be Son in game week 10. And I would bench Joao Pedro for the Southampton fixture. Dunk comes back to the bench. I'm playing Gabriel. It's just really strong. Like, I love the overall quality of the team. Like, it just has so much depth. I really like my team like this. I think I'm able to keep Trent as my differential. He's my favorite player in the league. And I think he's going to break FPL this year, especially given the fact that Liverpool have improved defensively. People are sleeping on Trent. He's probably the best asset in the game. And that's why I want to be holding on to him as long as I can. And I'll be able to get coverage of the Man City defense with Rico Lewis, maybe even selling a Saliba to a Vardiol if I need to. And I don't know, I just really like this squad. It just feels so deep. But again, I just want to go back to the way that my team looks in game week 4, bringing in Joao Pedro and Calvert-Lewin. It just gives me the ability to still make the move and bring Haaland in game week 7 because I would have 3 free transfers once we get there. So I'm very open-minded, but I'm very happy with the way that my team looks going into game week 4. I'm obviously going to be benching Saliba and starting Lewis Dunk. I did even consider dropping a Gabriel, but Spurs are just so poor from set pieces that I think I just have to be starting it. And this is just the way that my team looks, and I absolutely love it. Bruno, Salah, Eze, Joao Pedro, Isak, even Saka, they all have really good fixtures, and they're on penalties for their clubs, so I love my team. Even like the Dunk and Trent, as well as Henderson, like I would be shocked if I got a red arrow, but Haaland can go out there and pick up a hat-trick, and a lot of people will be captaining him, so let's just stay humble and stay calm. Let's see how things go. I'm only ranked at 3.3 billion, but I'm hoping that things will improve over the next couple of weeks, and if I provided some value to you over the course of this video, please just drop a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all again soon. Peace.